Okay, good evening. As promised, I'm going to do a video that's going to show elements of the UI for Automobilista 2. Um, I don't know if these are present in the demo. It's been years since I played the demo, so I thought I would just go through here and show you the elements that are available if you buy the full game. Some of these things you will not get unless you buy some of the downloadable content, but I think we should be able to flag those. So here you're seeing the main menu page. Um, oh, and I'm not going to go through the options. Sound, video quality, all the rest of those. Those are the things you can fiddle with, and if people want, I can do a video on those later. But let's show all the stuff that's right now on the main page. We'll just miss a couple of them here. Career, as you can see, is sort of blackened out. That's because there is no career mode. Um, they've been talking about that for a while, but it's unlikely they're ever going to put it in the game because people like so many different series and different cars that trying to build career mode that would appeal to a lot of people would be very difficult. So, but it's not worth worrying about it. I don't really think anybody would want to buy this game just for the career mode. There's so much else to it. We have multiplayer race. I've never done multiplayer. I suck so badly at it. It would probably just be an embarrassment to myself. But I hear it's pretty good, and it works really well. Up here is time trial. Time trial is kind of an interesting thing. Basically, you can pick out a track, you can pick out a vehicle, and it'll synchronize and tell you who's done the fastest on that track and what the record is, and you can go out there and try to beat it. And of course, it shows you if somebody's using a controller or a steering wheel, and the wrench means that they're using assists. And I don't know what the other field is, but yeah, it's if you're interested, this is the kind of thing that you can go out there to prove how good you are. I probably would not be anywhere even close to those times, so again, not worth my trouble. So let's look at the elements that I would be applying. Test day is probably the one that I would go to first. You go to test day, and you pick your vehicle, and there's lots of vehicles. We'll go through that in just a moment. And you pick a track, and there's lots of tracks. I think I figured out there's like 110 tracks and variations of tracks now in the game, or even more than that. You pick the session settings, the date, and the date makes a difference on the weather because if you select real time, weather, and you select, hang on, the weather forecast, you can pick your weather forecast or random, and if you pick random, it will go by what the climate is on that date. And those are the kind of things you can do to have some fun with it. If you change the default date in the northern hemisphere to like January, you'll have a cold day. The tires won't grip. The car will slide all over. You go in the middle of summer and it'll be so hot that the tires won't grip and you'll slide all over. You can pick day and night, just pick the hour, and it'll calculate whether or not that's sunrise, sunset, whatever. Time progression is an interesting concept. If I set time progression, and say I've set it to 20 here, that means every in-game 1 minute that I'm racing is 20 minutes in the game world. So like 25, 1 minute racing is 1 hour. So if I did a 24-minute race, it would go through a whole day. So that's kind of fun if you want to simulate running at Le Mans, the Le Mans 24 hours, but you don't want to spend the whole 24 hours running it. Weather slots, you can have up to 4 weather slots, and each one of these you can pick weather. Clear, light cloud, storms, rain, fog. The only thing they don't have is snow, but I'm sure it's because probably nobody races on snow. And then there's random. And if you pick more than one slot, it will transition at some point during your session. And so we'll go back. And that's what this is. So while we're here, I'll use this opportunity to go through all the different cars. But I'm not going to go through all the cars because we would be here a real long time. But this is all of the different classes of cars, and that's quite a lot of list. And this is the types of cars, which I'm a little confused sometimes between types and classes, but I know what they mean. But then you go through and you click the buttons and it breaks it down to the different series. Now, series may have more than one type of car in them. Now, series here, the Brazilian series, oops, wrong button. And we're way out of whack here. Let me go back to test days. There we go. Oops, hang on. We were picking cars out. Let's go back to where we were. See, if you go, these are all cars that race in different Brazilian series. There's a P1 Brazilian series and a P2 and a Copa Classic and all the rest. There's a lot of the game is from people who live in Brazil, and why they're based, and why there's a bias towards Brazil. But there's the reason for that is because they made the game. And then there's prototype class and people who know about prototype racing, all the different series. These 2005 classes, LMP1 and LMP2, have just been added. And then GT and Touring. And if you know your cars, you know what GT and Touring is. There's Historic Touring. You can have all sorts of interesting older cars, Volkswagens that are set up for racing. Also, I mean, you can find a class you like in this game. Formula ones go all the way from little Formula cars, Formula V, Formula Junior, that have very little power and they're fun to drive, all the way up to freaking out powerful Formula Ultimate cars that produce 1,000 horsepower. And then there's Formula USA, which is basically IndyCar, and there's several generations of them. And then there's the Formula Trainers. These are good cars to learn on for racing because there's no aerodynamics and they're very forgiving and they're a lot of fun. And here's oval track racing, stock cars and Brazilian stock cars and all that kind of stuff. And of course, oval racing includes Indy cars that run on ovals, and there's actually configurations for oval Indy cars versus the road course and street course Indy cars. And club racers like the Caterhams, street racers, Corvettes, fancy hypercars, supercars and hypercars like Lamborghinis. And then we're getting down to the classes I don't race because I'm really terrible at them. The karts. There are 5 different classes of karts. If you're the least bit interested in kart, this is the game you want because there's 5 different classes that they represent, the different types. Really interesting. There's off-road. This was added a few years ago. Dirt racers, trophy trucks, and autocross. So you can see there's a lot of stuff in here. We'll just pick one. Formula Uno. Copa Uno. Let me go back and pick this car again. Oops. Let me go back. I keep hitting this thing. I know what I'm doing. Test A. See, here's the information on the car. Power, displacement, torque, etc., etc. Tire compounds, hards when it's dry, wets when it's wet. No electronics, in other words, no ABS, no traction control. There's an adjustable turbo. No onboard biases. Got headlights and this pit speed limiter. Every car has a pit speed limiter in this game. I've never found one that doesn't. Alright, so those are the cars. Like I said, there's a lot to it, and I could do a whole video on just the different classes of cars and showing them off. But that gives you an idea. Let's go to the tracks, because there's a lot of tracks. There's a number of tracks for the basic game, and then the rest were added on with the season pass, the very downloadable contents. We can talk at some point if somebody's interested in the forum thread about purchase options. You can buy the base game. You can figure out what other DLC you want to buy for it. But let's right now go through just a few of the tracks. I'm assuming some of you know a little bit about auto racing will recognize some of these names there. For Indianapolis, we have the Indy Oval. We have the road course, which are famous. Laguna Seca. A lot of people know Laguna Seca from seeing it on television. And here's Nürburgring. Now, Nürburgring is actually two different race courses. There's the GP course, the Grand Prix course, which they haven't run out in a few years, which is a shorter course. The ones that say RX is for the autocross cars. Um, they actually have dirt sections. It's really cool. If you've ever watched Autocourse or go find a video about it, that alone makes the game a lot of fun. Running Autocourse is just cool. So there's all these different configurations for the GP track. But there's also the Green Hell, as it's called, the Nordschleife. Um, it's long, 20 kilometers. And then there's different configurations. There's the 2025 one, the 2020, and there's some slight differences to it. There's the 24-hour course that was run in 2020, and again, there's some differences from the regular course. And the same way for the 2025. And then down here is the real fun ones. The historic 1971, and this one is 28 kilometers. It's about 18 miles because it includes what's called the South Loop, or the South Track, and the North Track. And then here's the Nordschleife Historic 1971 that does include that extension. But again, this is the ultimate. If you've been in racing games, you know that this is the thing that racing games try to add always, is having the Nordschleife in there. It's incredibly difficult to learn how to drive it well, but it's a lot of fun to take some weird random car out and drive it on it. But let's go through some of the other tracks. Those of you who know about, there's Sebring, that's in Florida, where they run a 12-hour race, usually around St. Patrick's Day. And there's all the different configurations of Sebring. It's a great course. There's Silverstone, Road America. There's just buku's number of tracks here. And a lot of these are tracks in South America. Some in Brazil, some other countries. Because they have so many Brazilian series. And they're a lot of fun. Some of them are small, some of them are twisty, some of them are higher speed. So it just it's nice to go to play a game where you're going to go to a track that you've never seen before. Now there are ovals in here because we have the Indy cars, and this is the Gateway one. They call it St. Louis, but it's across the river in Illinois, and they have the two different road courses that are at the Gateway. Daytona, of course, the big oval, the road course, and the sports car course, which are two different things. This road course is the one that NASCAR actually runs on, and it's slightly different. And I know some people have said, well, why do they include them if they're not that different? Well, people who are purists really just know the difference. And there's a few courses in here that don't have their actual name because they don't have the licensing fee, like the Azure Circuit, which if you look at it, it's Monaco. So it's the race course of Monaco, except if you look at it, it's ever so slightly different in a few places. But it's about as close as you're going to get to racing in Monaco unless you get a game that has Monaco in it. All right, so we've gone through those two things. This is all about test day. So let's go to the last few elements on the main menu. Single race is what you think it is. This is to set up a single race. Just like when we're setting up test day, you pick a car, you pick a track, the sessions, you set up the sessions. Or you do want to practice, how long it's going to be, qualifying, how long it's going to be, and they show up here. And you can adjust all these things. So you can edit practice session, how long the session is, when does it start, because that's important for sunlight. And also if you're doing random weather slots, it's going to try to use the weather that it selects. And of course, there's fog and all, as I said, but it's going to depend on what you selected. Now, there's one thing I did not show you. Oops, boom, 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 boom. It's real weather. And I'm sorry I didn't show it to you when I was doing the first, um, when I was showing you test day, because this is the one that really depends on where you're located, what time of day it is, and what day of the year it is. Because you'll notice it says real historic weather. So if you want to race in July in Australia, in Adelaide, that's winter down there, so you might get cold temperatures. You might get a brisk day with a lot of wind. That's one of the fun things of this game, is doing real historic weather and finding out what it, and if it will try to actually load the weather for that actual day and year, if it can. If it can't find it, then it just load something that's appropriate. All right, so that's the practice sessions and the qualifying sessions, and you can pick how long they are. Practice is literally just practice. You go out there and you just turn times, see how good you are, learn the course. Qualifying sets the starting grid, and that's important, of course, because if you start in the back, it's a hell of a, especially on a shorter race. Race settings, um, you can set whether or not it's by laps or by time. The default date, and again, this is for the weather slots. You can switch historic weather, or it's up to 4 different slots for weather. Weather progression, sync to race. I kind of remind myself what that is again. Oh, that will actually, I have to remember what that is. Um, Never mind. I'd have to look it up again. I forgot what it is. I've never used it, so that weather regression. All right. Type of start, rolling or standing start. Um, if you've seen NASCAR, they do rolling starts. If you've seen Formula One, those are standing starts. Formation lap is just, do you do an actual formation lap in the game? If you say yes, you spend time driving it. If you say no, then the game simulates it, and your tires are warmed up, and you come up to the grid um, with the tires warmed up. And pit stop refueling, whether you're allowed to refuel during a pit stop, whether it's a mandatory pit stop, because some series require mandatory pit stops. And this is something fairly new now. Mandatory pit stop minimum tires. Some series actually require you to change a certain number of tires on a pit stop. Schedule full course yellow. This is another thing that got edited. Um, I haven't used. Some series schedule full course yellows, and I assume if you know about racing, you know what a yellow flag is. It's a caution flag, and the field bunches up behind a safety car. Uh, and they do that sometimes for this series of the purpose of making the racing more exciting. And then this is live track preset. What happens is that on trying to represent realistic racetrack physics over the course of a racing weekend, rubber builds up on the track, the grip gets better. So you can actually set how much rubber there is on the track, or you can say it was wet, and it means that the track is wet before you start. There's no rubber buildup on the track. Same way with damp. It's kind of an interesting thing to play around with. And this is just all the settings you can do just before you even start the race. Opponents. Now this is what we have here is because I previously had a preset. I'll show you that in a minute. And a preset says how many classes you have. You can edit the classes you have, the number of opponents you have. There's a maximum opponent number that the game for certain tracks can't exceed the number. For in the game, the AI will not be able to handle certain ones just because it simply can't handle the processing. But it's usually quite generous. AI skill, I always race at 80 because I suck. And I did read somewhere that says if you set it below 80, the AI does not take into account the uniqueness of each track as far as it's how it drives. At 80 or above, it does say, I know I'm on this track and therefore I should drive it certain ways. There's a wet skill scaler. Um, in other words, is the AI really horrible in the rain or really good in the rain? Aggressiveness is just how much they try to cut you off. Um, and then AI mistakes. This is actually kind of fun to turn it up to see what the AI does. Over here on the left side, you'll see the 4 different classes. The different liveries are available, meaning liveries means that's the maximum number of cars that you can run in that class, so that each one will have a unique livery on them. You'll notice that this number is a lot larger than 47, so the computer will make an allocation between the different classes proportionally so that they don't exceed the number 47. All right, and we already talked about picking a track, so we know about that. And there's one more field to look at. It's rules and penalties. This is kind of fun. And again, this is something when you load a preset, and I'll talk about that. Track penalties. If you go outside the track limit, you'll get a penalty. And how many times you get warnings, and after that, you get a penalty, a drive-through penalty, or a time penalty. Pit exit penalty. You can't violate when you leave and go out onto the track. You're not supposed to cut in front of people, so that's a penalty. Pit lane speed and whether or not you can have full course yellows. That's actually something that affects the game when you're playing a full race. A full course caution might happen, and you might spend several minutes sitting behind the safety car, packed up with a bunch of other cars. It happens in real life, so you can do it in the game. All right, we won't go into that anymore. Championship. Well, if you can do different races, you can do a championship. And what this does is it allows you to build a championship. There's a lot of these things are already pre-built. They have the calendar of how many tracks. They've got the cars that are available, and you can select the car that you want. And you can run a series and keep track of the points in the series, and you can decide whether you win. You can also build custom ones. I have several custom series here that use fun little cars or something different. And you're allowed 5 custom ones. I don't know why there's only 5 customs. I don't know if they just didn't want to save it any more than that. But it's easy enough just to write down the details. All right, we've got one more thing to look at, and then I'm going to quit talking. And that's the preset. And this is something really cool. Preset allows you to set the series that you're running and all the rules and the tracks and everything else by just going through here and picking out a series you like. Formula Vintage, Formula V, European Enduro, WeatherTech series in the US. Just all sorts of stuff. And karts, even karts and rallycross. But let's go to the very beginning. It's Formula Vintage. Now, here we go. Suddenly it's picked out. There's different color layout, and you see the cars. This is early 1960s and early 1970s Formula One cars. So if I decided to do a race with it, it shows me, and I click. These are the cars that are available, and there's two different classes that are available in this, Generation 1 and Generation 2. And these are the circuits that are available. And all of them are available because it doesn't restrict you to certain ones. And then here's the rules: practice times, race duration, opponents, that kind of stuff. And then all the rules and penalties. Now, if I go back here and clear the preset, and then pick another set of rules, and let's pick something and try to be very different. WeatherTech series, the IMSA WeatherTech, that's used racing in the U.S. stock cars. Sports cars. Here we go. And there's 3 different classes: GT3, GTDH, that's Daytona hybrids, and LMP2. and we go and look at the courses that are available. And these are the courses that actually were there in the IMSA series. Daytona, Indianapolis, the road course, Laguna Seca, Road America, Road Atlanta. If it gives you more than one choice, it's because they might run on a different course depending on which year that IMSA ran there. Sebring. So, and again, this sets all the race times and the practice and the qualifying times all to what they were in real life in the series. And then the race settings are the same way. Now, occasionally these things don't look right. Oh, I have it. That's because this thing is set to 40%. That's probably because at one time I set this thing to 40% race distance. So if you actually go to 100%, it's it's 24 minutes, which is still not right. All right, never mind. Something's wrong there. I'll have to fix it. But that gives you the idea. And then we look at the opponents. There's 26 GT3 liveries available, 10 LMDH, and 13 LMP2s. And there's a maximum of 47 cars. So it's going to pick from here because that's a little bit more than 47. So that's it, and I think that covers pretty much everything that's here through the menu. Let me know if you have any other questions or if we want to do another video to cover other areas of the game. But that's all. I'll sign off for now.